And live from our studios here in Accra, you are watching Connect Africa with me, Blessed Sugan. Happy New Year to you. In West Africa, our focus tonight is on Guinea, that stands at a pivotal moment in its political journey from years and military rule to what officials are now hailing as a possible return to stable democratic governance in Guinea. The Supreme Court is now confirming Mahamadou Doumbouya's presidential electoral victory. We'll get you the very latest from there. Plus, we're talking about what everyone else around the world is talking about, as ECOWAS is expressing concern now over recent developments in Venezuela following the capture of President Nicolás Maduro by the United States. And it's now calling for the respect of Venezuela's independence. What would that mean? And we'll tell you more, plus get you live updates from the US, where a United Nations Security Council meeting is underway. We'll also get some other matters happening across the continent. But first, here's a wrap of some of the major stories making the headlines across the continent.
Uganda's authorities have denied reports that they are planning to cut access to the internet during next week's election. The main opposition candidate last week repeated claims that the government was going to block the internet to prevent his supporters from mobilizing and sharing election results. On Friday, satellite internet provider Starlink restricted its services in Uganda following an order from the communications regulator fueling these concerns. President Yoweri Museveni is seeking to extend his 40-year rule in the January 15 elections. His strongest challenger is expected to be Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine, a former pop star. Meanwhile, Amnesty International is accusing Ugandan security forces of torture and arbitrary arrests as the country heads towards elections on January 15. President Yoweri Museveni, now 81, is seeking to extend his 4-decade rule amid growing claims repression is intensifying to silence the opposition. Amnesty says it has gathered evidence of security officers beating protesters and firing tear gas at supporters of the National Unity Platform led by single-term politician Bobby Wine, who previously challenged Museveni in the disputed 2021 election. Tens of thousands of people have been recently displaced by fighting in Sudan as the civil war rages on. The latest front in the war between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces, who have been fighting since April 2023, is Southern Kordofan. In recent weeks, the rapid support forces have boasted their control over West Kordofan, as well as their siege on Kadugli and Diling in South Kordofan, where hundreds of thousands are now grappling with starvation. At least 26 people drowned and 14 others are missing, according to emergency services, after a boat carrying farmers and fishermen capsized in northeastern Nigeria. Executive Director of the State Emergency Management Agency in Yobe State, Mohammed Goje, told reporters the incident happened late Saturday when a rudimentary passenger boat going from Jigawa State to Yobe State capsized. He said 13 other passengers have been rescued and rescue operations were still underway.
Well, back now to what the world has been talking about. The latest we have is that the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, is now wading in and expressing concern over recent development in Venezuela following the capture of President Nicolás Maduro by the United States and reported military strikes on the capital, Caracas. In a statement, the regional bloc is now calling on the international community to respect Venezuela's sovereignty and territorial integrity, while also affirming its solidarity with the people of Venezuela as they work to determine the future of their country through an inclusive political process. Let's get to excerpts of the statement for you, released by the Economic Community of West African States, as you can see here, where ECOWAS is now pointing out that the Economic Community of West African States has now followed with concern recent developments in the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, while it recognizes the right of states to fight international crimes, including terrorism and drug trafficking. ECOWAS says it is reminding the international community about the obligation to respect, first of all, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of each other as enshrined in international law, especially Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter. ECOWAS fully aligns itself with the statements of the African Union, which was issued on the 3rd of January 2026, as it calls for restraint, inclusive dialogue amongst the people of Venezuela, as the statement is pointing to. Now, ECOWAS, going forward, is pointing out that they are reiterating its solidarity with the people of Venezuela, and they're urging all states to respect the independence and territorial integrity of Venezuela. It's expressing also support to the people as they shape, the future of their country through an inclusive process, as the statement is pointing out. Quite a lot has been happening in the United States, where Nana Kakari, a senior political reporter, is. She's joining us from the US now, where, first of all, Nicolas Maduro, together with his wife, is now appearing in court for the very first time, and at the same time in New York, where you are, Nana, and the United Nations has been holding a Security Council meeting. We'll get to that meeting shortly, but tell us about what we've seen, so far. The press conference, then, of course, now it's official. The U.S. now charging Nicolas Maduro.
So you know what? Nicolas Maduro was just pleaded not guilty. The court session is actually over. It lasted just about 31 minutes session. And Maduro actually is being held in a jail in Brooklyn. He arrived in New York City early this morning, and of course, moments ago, he was arraigned in a federal court. In the federal court, he was advised of his criminal charges, which is basically the drug trafficking charges. He and his wife are facing drug trafficking charges. He said that he was innocent. He said he was a decent man, and he pleaded not guilty. He actually spoke through a translator because he spoke Spanish, and then a translator then translated it to the judge. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about this federal judge, Alvin Hellenstein. He has presided over terrorist attacks. He actually presided over the September 11 terrorist attacks in New York. And he was actually confirmed and nominated by former President Bill Clinton in 1998. Interestingly, just recently, he made headlines here in the United States because he refused President Trump's case, the hash money case. President Trump was seeking to move the case to a federal court, which he refused. So quite an interesting judge, experienced judge right there. Now inside the courtroom, it was very quiet. We saw videos. Of course, cameras wasn't in the courtroom, but we're hearing that in the courtroom, Maduro had a lot of dialogue with his defense team. His defense actually argued in the case that he's the head of state of a sovereign foreign country, so he's immune from prosecution and must get these kind of privileges. So basically, the next court date for Maduro is March 17th. He was not granted bail. Like I said earlier, he pleaded not guilty. The court session is over, and he's returning back to jail at a detention center in Brooklyn.
There's little talk about the wife of Nicolas Maduro. What more do we know about her case as well?
Yeah, so she also pleaded not guilty. She basically said she had actually medical issues and need an X-ray, which again, the judge did not really bow to that because she also had to go back to the jail, but regardless of her medical issues. So she's also facing the same criminal charges, which is the drug trafficking charges, just as her husband, Nicolas Maduro.
Well, I see. Let's talk about another development as we speak in the U.S., where you are, with the United Nations now holding their Security Council meeting. Lots of diplomats have been speaking. Statements so far from including the U.S. itself, which has been justifying their activity. You've been monitoring bits of that. What have we been hearing so far from the countries that we've been listening to?
And interestingly, you know what, Blessed, while the UN Security Council session was going on, Maduro was also facing the federal judge in the courtroom. Well, at the UN Center, which is just a few blocks away, maybe 10, 15 minutes away from the federal court in Manhattan, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres actually maintained he's very concerned that the international law was now respected by the United States, and United States military action in Venezuela could probably interfere with how other countries deal, or other powerhouses deal with other countries. So he's basically still deeply concerned about the military operation. However, also just moments ago, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, also spoke. But interestingly, Blessed, he maintained, we talk about military operation, he kept saying law enforcement operation, because the U.S. still maintained that they are not at war with Venezuela. They acted in self-defense. Initially, President Trump has said, you know, the main reason they took that action was basically national security, and also to make sure that drug trafficking were not coming into the United States. The U.S. had accused Venezuela that they have, actually the accusation against Maduro is basically that Maduro has facilitated thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. Then again, that important thing to note is that they're not saying it's a military operation. They're saying it's a self-defense. And at the UN Security Council, the U.S. ambassador to the UN maintains it was a law enforcement operation.
Okay, let's take a listen now to some of the activities happening moments ago at the United Nations Security Council meeting. Nana Kakari joining us from the United States now. Thank you for your time, for providing us with all of the updates. I want us to hear from some, members of the United Nations Security Council, non-permanent members, some of which are ECOWAS member states, speaking and pointing out their concerns about the development, including the US also, which has a perspective on this. Let's listen to Liberia and what their position is on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the A3 members, namely the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, and my own country, Liberia. We thank the presidency for promptly convening this important meeting. We congratulate Somalia on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month and warmly welcome all new members. The A3 appreciates USG DiCarlo's comprehensive briefing and listened carefully to the remarks offered by civil society representatives. We also welcome the representative of Venezuela and the representatives of the region to this meeting. Mr. President, the A3 aligns itself with the recent communique of the African Union on the situation in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and continues to monitor developments there with deep concerns. In particular, we note reports regarding the detention of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife and incidents involving Venezuelan institutions. Such developments present serious challenges not only to Venezuela's internal stability, but also underscore the imperative to safeguard the broader peace and security of the region. The A3 remains steadfast in its commitment to the fundamental principles of international law, including the full respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations in the interest of regional stability and international peace. We believe these are essential foundations for international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Our position underscores the importance of dialogue, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect for constitutional and institutional frameworks. Mr. President, the complex situation in Venezuela requires a comprehensive response that is both inclusive and nationally owned. We continue to hold that a sustainable and peaceful resolution can only be found through constructive dialogue among Venezuelans themselves, with genuine respect for the aspiration and rights of the Venezuelan people, and with the constructive support of the international community. The A3 expresses its solidarity with the people of Venezuela and reiterates the African Union's commitment to peace, stability, and mutual respect among nations and regions. It's important for all parties, both within Venezuela and in the broader international community, to exercise restraint and responsibility, upholding international law and avoiding any action that could escalate tension or threaten regional stability. The A3 stands ready to support all efforts within this Council and in cooperation with regional partners to facilitate a peaceful, inclusive, and lasting resolution to the situation in Venezuela. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Liberia for this statement and now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Mr. President, thank you for chairing. And I particularly want to thank you, Mr. Freitas, for your briefing. And I'll point out that Mr. Freitas is in exile, having fled the regime. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for shedding a light on the true atrocities of the illegitimate Maduro regime. This past weekend, colleagues, the United States successfully carried out a surgical law enforcement operation facilitated by the U.S. military against two indicted fugitives of American justice, narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. Colleagues, Nicolas Maduro is responsible for attacks on the people of the United States, for destabilizing the Western Hemisphere, and illegitimately repressing the people of Venezuela. As Secretary Rubio has said, there is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation in furtherance of lawful indictments that have existed for decades. The United States arrested a narco-trafficker who is now going to stand trial in the United States in accordance with the rule of law for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. A similar action was taken in 1989 against Manuel Noriega. He was arrested, indicted, convicted in a court of law, served in prison in the United States and in Panama, and the Panamanian people, the American people, are safer for it. And undeniably, the region was more stable. This law enforcement action was directed consistent with the President of the United States' responsibility as Commander-in-Chief to protect Americans at home and abroad against a fugitive who is directly responsible for narcoterrorism that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and created destabilizing violence throughout our hemisphere. Nicolas Maduro and his co-defendant, Celia Flores, have been transferred here to the United States to stand trial for their crimes. Maduro was indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York and faces very serious criminal charges.
Well, so excerpts of what transpired moments ago at the United Nations Security Council meeting. Back now to the continent, specifically to Guinea, where the country's Supreme Court Sunday validated an overwhelming presidential electoral victory for the military chief Mamadi Doumbouya, who's now being credited with 86.72% of votes cast, nearly 4 years after the September 2021 coup that toppled the longtime leader Alpha Condé. Guinea held its first presidential elections on December 28 as part of a broader transition process designated to restore what is now being called a constitutional order. So what are the implications for Guinea, knowing that there's a transition now from military rule into democracy? Joining us now is Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar, who is with the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Thank you so much for your time here on the program. That's the man we're talking about on our screens now, Mamadi Doumbouya. Came in military uniform. He's now, a civilian ruler. Safe to say that Guinea is back to democratic rule, correct? Mukhtar, I hope you can hear me. Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar is the Executive Secretary, Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Mukhtar, if you can just hear me, I was just talking about, the outcome of the results that we've just, heard about in Guinea. And now, the man on our screens now, Mamadi Doumbouya, will no longer be a military ruler. He's now a democratically elected leader, over 86% of the votes. Safe to say democracy is back? And Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar is still with us. I would, of course, get some comments from him shortly. You're watching Connect Africa. Please stay. And we're back to the story that we're following, the outcome of the election in Guinea, from a military leader to now a democratically elected ruler. That's the case of Mamadi Doumbouya. Let's bring in Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Thank you for your time. I was just pointing to the gentleman on our screens. Probably he'll be back again. So you see him, not a new face, obviously, but Doumbouya is back. To office now as a democratically elected leader. He ousted a democratically elected ruler. But of course, the outcome of the elections, over 86%, the gentleman on the screens now. Is that safe to say that democracy is back?
Well, what we're seeing is an interesting development in the country of Guinea. Of course, many who have been watching this space and people who are familiar with the African terrain when it comes to leadership, we're not surprised at all at the U-turn in terms of his decision to contest elections as a military leader. Following the coup that took place in 2020 in Guinea. What we're seeing is a very familiar pattern of leadership within the space. Even in our own country, Ghana, we had a similar situation from 1981 when our former president came as a military leader the second time and transitioned to a civilian leader from 1993. We saw a similar fashion took place in the country of Uganda when Yoweri Museveni came in as a military leader, promising to just stay within a limited time in power. And today he's been there for more than 4 decades. We have similar situations across the region. And so this is not a very unique situation and not very different. What we are interested in is in how he proceeds from here and whether he would stick to the term limits as now a civilian leader in Guinea.
You're talking about term limits. Doesn't look like he respects that, does he?
Well, it's too early to say that at the moment. We have seen him act in ways that appear different from his colleagues when they broke away from civilian traditions of leadership within West Africa. You remember the case of Mali, the case of Niger and Burkina Faso, when all these countries had military coups that happened, including his own country. We thought many felt that they would have followed the same pattern or the same path. He did not, and he chose to depart from the alliance of Sahelian states and seeking to craft and couch his own form of leadership. And so we are yet to see a pattern that clearly shows or predicts what kind of democratic culture he would leave in place in Guinea. It's too early at the moment to say what it would be like.
Going forward, looking at how this transition has been managed, he says is to stabilize democracy in the country. Do you feel that will reopen the country to political opposition and, by extension, stabilize the country's democratic gains?
In these elections, we saw a couple of, opposition elements contest this election. None of them got anywhere close to 7-8%. Well, I mean, of course, we see similar things across the region. Deliberately, they would not create a situation where you have a strong opposition to contest them. Even in democratic spaces within Africa, it is not a tradition where you would find the incumbent encouraging opposition participation, active participation in politics. We do not expect to see that happen in Guinea.
All right.
What we are looking at is how he transitions, from that military style leadership into this civilian role, and what kind of civilian and democratic infrastructure he would put in place. We already saw consultations and engagement with civil society and other interest groups in the run-up to the constitutional reforms that he was looking to put in place. If this was genuinely conducted, we would expect to see more of those shape his leadership in the next years to come.
All right, grateful for your time. Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director, West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. That's all we have for you in this package of Connect Africa. I am Blessed Sunga. We'll see you again. Until then, it's a wrap from us. Bye-bye.